Hi, I'm Chaitrali and we are going to discuss about Apple and its notable competitor Samsung Electronics. The comparison will be based on companies' position in the market. We will interpret how the companies issue credit or manage assets and maximize their utility based on financial information. Now I'll give you a brief introduction of both the companies. Apple has an eye for revolutionary technology. Since release, the company's iPhone, which accounts for the largest portion of its sales, has spurred a revolution in cell phones and mobile computing. Apple also continues to innovate its core Mac desktop and laptop computers like MacBook Air and the company's popular iPad tablet. One of the world's largest semiconductor manufacturers, Samsung Electronics is also South Korea's top electronic company. It makes many kinds of consumer devices like DVD players, semiconductors such as DRAM, static RAMs, and communications devices ranging from wireless handsets and smartphones to networking gear. Operations Apple Inc. One of the factors that makes Apple products so popular with some and less so with others is that its hardware and software products are tightly woven together for a seamless experience. In 2014, the company added greater cohesion, enabling users to go from device to device with little interruption. Samsung Electronics. The company operates through independent business units: consumer electronics, IT and mobile communications, semiconductors, and display products. A truly vertically integrated company, Samsung Electronics is a leader in producing many of the chips and software at the heart of its products. Strategy Apple Inc. To shore up its presence in corporations, Apple formed a partnership with IBM in early 2014 to develop industry specific applications for Apple's mobile devices. Apple has brought chip design expertise in house to reduce its dependence on outside semiconductor suppliers. Its primary growth strategies are to solidify its market leadership by focusing on product differentiation in each business unit, identify businesses that will sustain growth over the next 5 to 10 years, and prepare management to anticipate and respond to business risks during time of global market uncertainty. Key drivers of Apple Inc. The key driver for Apple is its flagship iPhone device, which now accounts for approximately 62% of Apple's total revenue. Geographically, the key driver for Apple growth is China. Apple grew revenue in China by an astonishing 99% on year-over-year basis. Apple's enterprise sales, fueled by Apple's strategic partnerships with IBM and Cisco and a strong product lineup, accounted for 25 billion in annual Apple revenue during the last 12 months. 30% figure cites the percentage of iPhone buyers that were upgrading from an Android device. Key drivers for Samsung Electronics. The semiconductor business will continue to be a key driver for Samsung growth, reported solid growth in operating profits in quarter 3 of 2015. Smartphone business improved in the third quarter, and Samsung's strategy to revive the segment will be another key factor for the companies going forward. Internet of Things or IoT space continues to gain momentum. Samsung plans to equip 90% of its devices with IoT capabilities by 2017.
Hello, my name is Hamed and I'm doing timeline, horizontal and vertical analysis in this project. Thank you. On April Fool's Day 1976, Apple Computer Company is founded in a residential garage by Steve Jobs and Steven Wozniak, both college dropouts. Next year, they produced the first personal computer designed for the mass market, Apple II. Since then until now, Apple has been changed our life by introducing iPod, iPad, iPhone, iTunes, and MacBook, and became one of the pioneers in tech industry. In 1938, Samsung is founded in Korea. Now, it's one of the most successful one between tech companies. They produce LCD, CPU, smartphones, and now a smartwatch. In 2009, Samsung takes number one spot in US cell phone market, and at the same time, they took the number one spot in the global digital sign market for the first time. Coming to horizontal analysis, balance sheets 2014 and 2015 shows that cash and cash equivalent for Apple is much more than Samsung. When cash and cash equivalent for Apple is more than 50%, it's less than 10% for Samsung. The other side of graph shows that long-term debt for Apple is more than 80%, which means that Apple company is reliable according to creditor point of view. Comparing horizontal analysis of income statements 2014 and 2015 shows that all the elements regarding to Apple companies is growing up, while all the elements related to Samsung companies is falling down, which means that total income of Apple company is much higher than total income of Samsung. By looking to vertical analysis of balance sheet 2014, we can find out long-term marketable securities for Apple is much bigger than Samsung, while total current asset of Samsung is bigger than Apple. On the other side of the graph, we can find out that retained earnings and total shareholders' equity of Apple is less than Samsung. By looking to vertical analysis of balance sheet 2015, we can find out that the graphs are following similar patterns, which means that the companies are following same business strategies. For Apple, this means that they are maintaining their position as a dominant in market share. Coming to vertical analysis of income statement 2014 shows that while both companies' gross profit is similar, operating profit for Apple is much higher than Samsung. On the other hand, the expenses of Samsung is higher than Apple, which means that the total income of Apple would be more than total income of Samsung. Again, in vertical analysis of income statement 2015 shows that while gross profit of both companies is almost at the same point, the operating profit of Apple is much than Samsung. On the other hand, expenses of Samsung is now bigger than Apple, which means that the gap in total income of both companies in this year is bigger than last year.
Hi, my name is Omkar and I will be presenting stock value analysis of Apple, as Apple is listed on Nasdaq and Samsung is not listed on Nasdaq. It is listed on South Korean market, and I will also be presenting creditors' point of view about Apple and Samsung, whether to lend money or not.
This is Apple's 5-year stock value trend. Due to its various products and already built large customer base, profitability and popularity of Apple is increased, and stock value shows that trend of investor confidence in Apple. Now, this is a very important person. Creditor. Creditors will analyze the company's financial statements to decide whether to lend money to that company or not. The decision may be based on various parameters, like if the company is earning at a higher rate or not, how quickly can the company liquidate its assets, are there any previous liabilities on that company. Most important is days payable outstanding. How fast does the company pay to its creditors? Because creditor would want that company to pay as early as possible. Now, let's look at Apple's balance sheet. Assets, liabilities, and stockholders' equity all are going up year by year, whereas in Samsung's balance sheet, the good thing for Samsung is liabilities are constant for 5 years and assets and equity are increasing. For a creditor, profitability of a company is very important, because if a company is not making profit, how will they pay for their debts? Looking at the graph, we can say that Apple has better profitability statistics than Samsung Electronics. Apple has better profit margin, return on assets, and return on equity. Now let's look at net income comparison for Apple and Samsung Electronics. Clearly, we can see that Apple's net income is more than Samsung for every year for the last 5 years. No doubt, both companies are great, but Apple will have upper hand when creditors analysis is concerned.
Hi, I'm Neil and I'll be explaining the summary of the SEC filings for both Apple and Samsung. I'll be covering the business segmentation, the risks, the executive compensation structure, and also the earnings call for both the companies. Another important feature, which is very important for the overall analysis, is the Apple versus Samsung lawsuits, which will be covered in the later part of my presentation. So here is the business segmentation for Apple. The products basically consist of the company's line of smartphones, tablets, desktop, and portable personal computers. It also consists of various operating system software and application software, and also display and peripheral products like the Apple TV and service and support product like the Apple Care. The business segmentation of Samsung basically consists of three main parts. One is the consumer electronics, second IT and mobile communications, and third device solutions. The mobile and smartphone market is the one which directly competes with the Apple's line of products. Now let's have a look at the risks associated with Apple's line of business. The global and regional economic conditions poses a risk as consumers may postpone spending in response to tighter credit, higher unemployment, and declines in income or asset values. Also, the company needs to ensure a continuing and timely introduction of innovative new products to the marketplace. The company's distributors also distribute products from the competing manufacturers. There is also a risk that the company will forecast incorrectly and order or produce excess or insufficient amounts of components and products. These are the risks of Samsung's business. The company is exposed to foreign currency volatility due to exchange position of currencies, especially the US dollar, euro, Japanese yen, and Chinese yuan. The company's investment portfolio consists of direct and indirect investments in equity securities and is classified as available for sale, which is in line with the company's strategy. The company is also exposed to interest rate risk mainly through interest bearing liabilities and assets. Due to the large investments made by the company, maintaining adequate levels of liquidity is critical. Also, the credit risk arises due to the normal course of transaction and investing activities where clients or other parties fail to discharge an obligation. Now let's have a look at the executive compensation structure for Apple. It is basically divided into three main parts. One is the long-term equity awards, annual performance-based cash bonuses, and also base salaries. The company emphasizes long-term equity awards and annual performance-based cash bonuses so that a substantial portion of each executive's total compensation opportunity is linked directly to the company's stock price or otherwise driven by performance. Here is the executive compensation structure for Samsung. It has the salary, the bonuses, and other earned income. In the bonuses, we have the traditional holiday bonus, which is 100% of the monthly wage, and also the long term incentive. This long term incentive is calculated within the director remuneration limit based on the average salary of 3 years using the return on equity, stock performance, and also the earnings before interest and taxes margin as the criteria. Now let's have a look at the earnings call for Apple. This is the quarter 4 2015 unaudited summary of the earnings call for Apple. We can decipher from this data that the company posted quarterly revenue of $51.5 billion dollars and quarterly net profit of $11.1 billion. Dollars. The gross margin was 39.9% compared to 38% in the year ago quarter. Also, international sales accounted for 62% of the quarter's revenue. The growth was fueled by record fourth quarter sales of iPhone, the expanded availability of Apple Watch, and all-time records for Mac sales. Here is the quarter 3 2015 earnings call for Samsung. We can decipher that there is strong shipment growth led by the launch of new models like Edge Plus, Note 5, A8 and J5, but also there is lower average selling price due to the increased sales in mid to low end products. Also, despite the weak demand for the tablet market, shipments and earnings remained in line with the previous quarter. In the networks business, profit improved quarter on quarter due to overseas carriers' LTE network expansion. Another important salient feature which is important for the overall analysis of these two companies are Apple versus Samsung lawsuits. There are over 50 pending cases in at least 9 countries and 6 US litigations. The most important one is the Apple one, in which Apple has sued Samsung in US federal court. The jury has ruled that Samsung willfully infringed a number of Apple patents in creating a number of devices and has been ordered to pay almost $1.05 billion in damages. Apple, which Samsung countersued for $422 million, will not have to pay anything to Samsung. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mohit Kudakar. I'm here to talk about the key ratios which are formative of a company. We are talking about Apple and Samsung. Business between Apple and Samsung is strictly not comparable because Apple designs, manufactures, communication and media devices, whereas Samsung includes air conditioners and refrigerators as well. The major difference between Apple and Samsung is that Apple follows the US GAAP regulations and Samsung follows IFRS regulations. The key financial ratios include market capitalization. Apple's market capitalization is 4 times 6 times Samsung. That means that Apple is 4.6 times bigger than Samsung. The next would be the revenue. The revenue for Apple is about 1.4 times that of Samsung. So which shows that Apple earns a lot more than Samsung. The third important ratio is the dividend payout ratio. It is reflective of how much dividend a particular company gives. Apple pays about 1.4 times more dividend than Samsung. The current stock price for Apple and Samsung is shown here. Apple is listed on the Nasdaq, whereas Samsung is listed on the South Korean market. So exactly the stock price cannot be compared. The earnings per share for those particular stock prices are listed here. Apple EPS is 9.22, whereas Samsung EPS is 125.87 for their respective share prices. The free cash flow graph is shown here. The free cash flow for Apple is way higher, 17.6 times greater than Samsung, which shows that Apple has a huge cash reserve, whereas Samsung doesn't have that much cash. The interesting fact here is that Apple requires only 15% of working capital of Samsung. So Apple requires about 15% of the total cash or expense. Apple requires only 15% of the money required by Samsung to perform its operations. The important other ratios are return on equity. Return on equity is the most important ratio for a company. Apple return on equity is about 4.4 times Samsung's. The return on assets for Apple is 2.74 times Samsung, which shows that Apple converts its assets better. Let's move on to liquidity and financial health ratios. The current ratio, which is a measure of the current assets to the current liabilities, both the companies Samsung as well as Apple have a current ratio greater than 1, which indicates good liquidity. Apple has a relatively small debt as compared to its operating income. Samsung has a relatively negligible debt, so both companies perform similar in that range. Let's move on to efficiency ratios. Days sale outstanding. This signifies that Apple collects its account receivables much faster than Samsung in less number of days. Apple also has 9 times inventory turns of Samsung, which is shown by the inventory turnover ratio. The Apple has more efficient business operations than Samsung, which are shown by the fixed assets turnover. The valuation ratios, which are the most important from point of view of a shareholder. The P ratio for Apple is slightly higher than that of Samsung, but are relatively similar. The most important part for a shareholder or an investor is the earnings per share. How much money he would get from a particular share, or how much earnings he will be generating from a particular share. The EPS for Apple for the past 5 years is EPS growth is 33.61, whereas for Samsung it's just 18.84. So this shows that Apple EPS grew by 33%, whereas Samsung grew by 18.84%. The overall street view says that Apple will grow at 13.9% as per Morningstar, whereas Samsung's growth looks uncertain and the estimates are not available. The important question is that when should we sell? You shouldn't you should only consider selling Apple if there are signs of erosion of its innovative product pipeline and the growth rate becomes negative. If this doesn't show up, you should stay invested. And if another stock is also available at an attractive valuation, you should go for that stock after selling Apple. That's all from me.
This is the current position of Apple and Samsung in global smartphone operating profit share. There may be a bruise or two on Apple, but overall its results are simply outstanding. The company is realizing massive growth and is aggressively returning cash to shareholders. Investors have the opportunity to invest in this world class company at a cheap valuation. Apple stock is attractive at any growth rate above 0% and should only be sold if there are signs of attrition of its lead position in its innovative product pipeline. After comparing ratios and doing horizontal and vertical analysis, we can conclude that Apple is better than Samsung in all aspects, but with a small margin. Thank you.